An old man died in the livery at Antler Crossing, and there was nobody to say his name. The laundress had $4 to her name, and 21 days before they took the roof off her head.
County does not pay for strangers, ma'am. There is a hole out past the fence, and that is what he gets.
She spent every cent she had on a stranger's grave and a cut marker. 3 weeks later, a rich man rode into Antler Crossing, read that marker in the churchyard, and went down on his knees in the wet grass. And what he did next would change everything. The water was never warm enough, and it was never hot enough for long. Delia Coye had learned in 11 years to stop being annoyed about it. You built the fire at 4, you got the copper going, you worked the first load through while the water still had some temper in it, and by 9 you were doing the sheets in what was essentially a warm pond. It was the 3rd week of September in 1889. The mornings had turned. Delia was 38. She had been a wife for 9 years and a widow for 11, which meant she had been alone rather longer than she'd been anything else. She was thin through the shoulders and thick through the wrists, and her hands had gone permanently red to a line halfway up the forearm. Her daughter Etta was 12 and was pinning a line of shirts in the gray light behind the wash house. "Ma, there's a paper on the gate again." "Leave it. It's a different one." Delia straightened up out of the copper and pushed her hair off her forehead with her wrist. She went out to the gate. It was a different one. The first 3 had been notices. This one was a letter, folded and wedged into the slats, and it had Orrin Sedge's name printed at the bottom in a good clear hand. She read it twice standing in the wet grass. The lot behind the mercantile on which the wash house stood had been sold on the 11th of September to Mr. Orrin Sedge of Antler Crossing, and Mr. Sedge intended to build, and the structures presently on the lot were to be removed by the sitting tenant by the 14th of October, or would be removed for her at her cost, 21 days. Delia folded the letter and put it in her apron pocket and went back to the copper because there were 40 shirts in it and they did not care. The wash house was not much, 3 walls of plank and one of stone where the copper sat, a shingled roof that had been patched 4 times, a beaten dirt floor, and 11 years of Delia Coye's work stacked around the inside of it in a way that made sense to nobody but her. There were shelves. On the shelves were baskets, and on the baskets were tags, and the tags were in her own hand. Breedlove, Mancastle, the hotel, Pell, Rev. Hanley, Sheriff, ladies of the academy. Etta came in and sat on the flour barrel with her boots swinging. "Where will we go?" "I do not know yet." "Will we go to Wichita?" "I do not know yet, Etta." Mrs. Breedlove said. "I do not care what Mrs. Breedlove said." Delia put a shirt through the mangle and caught it on the other side. "Mrs. Breedlove has got a husband and a parlor and an opinion about everybody in this county, and one of those 3 is not any use to her." Etta went quiet for a while, which in that child meant she was working around to something. "Ma, why do you write on all of them?" "On all of what?" "The tags and the corners." Etta picked up a folded shirt off the ironing board and turned back the tail of it. In the corner, in fine thread, was a small mark like a bird's foot. "You put one on every single thing, so it goes back to the right man. But you know whose it is. You always know whose it is." Delia stopped the mangle. "I do," she said. "Then why do you mark them?" "Because I might get sick," Delia said, "or run over by a wagon, and somebody would have to finish out the week, and they would not know a Macaskill collar from a Breedlove one, and there would be 40 men in this town in the wrong shirts." Etta considered that. "That's a strange thing to worry about." "It is my trade," Delia said. "Every trade is strange from the outside." She went back to the mangle. "There is not a man in this county I could not name off his linen," she said, "how he wears through a cuff, where he splits a seam, whether his wife mends or whether I do. I have had my hands on the private cloth of every soul in Antler Crossing for 11 years, and they cross the street when they see me coming, because a woman who handles other people's dirt is the lowest thing this town can think of." She fed the next shirt through. "So I mark them," she said. "It costs me nothing, and it means the work is mine." He came in on the Thursday, and he was dead by the Saturday. Nobody got a name out of him. Sil Prather, who kept the livery, said the old man had come in off the Dodge Road on foot with a bad chest and asked to sleep in the loft, and had paid 2 bits for it and had been civil. By Friday night, he could not get up the ladder. By Saturday noon, he was gone. Reverend Pell came down, and Sheriff Bick Hanley came down, and the 2 of them stood in the livery yard with Prather and had the conversation that a town has. "There is nothing on him," Hanley said. "A pocket knife, some string, 4 cents. No name at all?" "He never gave one." Pell rubbed the back of his neck. "The county will not pay." "The county will not pay." Hanley agreed. "There is ground out past the churchyard fence. We put 2 in it last winter. Unmarked." Unmarked. Delia Coye had come down for the hotel's sheets, which was why she was standing at the gate of the livery yard with a basket on her hip, listening to 3 men decide that a person was going to go into the ground with no name on him. "What did he die of?" she said. The 3 of them looked round. "Lungs," Prather said. "It was in his chest when he got here." "Was he alone?" "Ma'am, he was a drifter." "That is not what I asked you," Delia said. "I asked if he was alone." Nobody answered her. Delia set the basket down on the gate post. "What does a box cost?" she said. Pell blinked. "Mrs. Coye?" "What does a box cost, Reverend?" $2.50 for a plain one from Hackett," Pell said slowly. $1 for the digging, 60 cents for a marker if you want the words cut, and Hackett does the cutting. $4.10. About that. Delia stood there for a moment with her jaw working. Then she reached into her apron and took out a small twist of cloth and unrolled it on the gatepost and counted out $4 in coin and 1 dime. Sheriff Hanley made a sound. "Mrs. Coye, you do not have that to spend." "No," Delia agreed. "I do not." "Ma'am, you did not know this man." "No," Delia said, "but somebody did." She pushed the money across the post toward Reverend Pell. "Put him in the churchyard," she said, "inside the fence, and I want the words cut." "What words?" Pell said. "We have got no name." "Then look for one," Delia said. "You have not looked. You have all been standing in this yard for an hour deciding where the hole goes. They found it in the lining. It was Etta who thought of it in the end, because Etta was 12 and had not yet learned that there are places you do not put your hands. She went through the old man's coat while the men were arguing about the wagon, and she found the tear in the lining under the left arm where something flat had been carried for a very long time, and she pulled out a folded paper gone soft as cloth. She brought it to her mother without opening it. Delia unfolded it on the tailgate. It was a discharge. It was printed and filled in by hand, and the ink had gone brown, and the folds had worn nearly through, and it had been folded and unfolded so many times that it came apart into 4 pieces in her hands. She laid the pieces out in order. Rufus Tandy, Sergeant, Company D, 9th Kansas Volunteer Cavalry, enlisted August 1861, discharged by reason of expiration of service, November 1864, at Fort Scott, Kansas. Reverend Pell read it over her shoulder and said, "Well, there he is." "Was there anything else in the coat?" Delia asked Etta. "No, ma'am. Nothing? No letter? No picture? Just that." Delia looked at the 4 pieces of paper on the tailgate. 25 years, she thought. A man carries 1 piece of paper in his coat lining for 25 years, and it is not a photograph of anybody. It is a piece of government printing that says he was somewhere. "Cut that on the stone," she said. "All of it?" "His name, his rank, his company." Delia folded the pieces carefully back together and put 9th Kansas on it so it is legible from the path. "Mrs. Coye, a marker that size will run past 60 cents. "Then it will run past 60 cents, Delia said, "and I will do the Hackett family's washing for nothing until it is square, and you may tell him I said so." They buried Rufus Tandy on the Monday morning inside the churchyard fence, under the elm at the north end, with the ground still soft from the Saturday rain. There were 4 people at it: Reverend Pell, Sil Prather, Delia Coye, and Etta. Pell read the short service. It took 6 minutes. Afterward, Etta stood looking at the raw dirt. "Ma, was that a waste of $4?" Delia thought about it seriously because the child had asked seriously. "We are going to lose the wash house in 19 days either way," she said. $4 was never going to save it. It was only ever going to be $4. "That's not an answer." "No," Delia said. "The answer is that he was somebody's, Etta, and everybody had stopped looking, and it cost $4 to stop that being true. I would spend it again." 3 weeks went by, and the town forgot about it in the way a town does. Delia worked. She got 2 new customers because the hotel's other laundress went to Hutchinson, and she lost one because Mrs. Breedlove decided the Coye woman had made a spectacle of herself over a tramp. On balance, she was 6 shirts a week ahead and 19 days closer to nowhere. On the 8th of October, a private rail car was shunted onto the siding at Antler Crossing, which had not happened in 4 years, and a good deal of the town found reasons to walk past the depot. Delia did not. Delia had 40 shirts. It was Etta who came running down the lot at 4:30 in the afternoon, with her hair out of its braid. Ma, there's a man in the churchyard." "There is generally a man in the churchyard. He's kneeling in the grass," Etta said, "in a good suit, and Reverend Pell is standing there, and he can't get him to stand up." Delia came round the corner of the church, with her sleeves still rolled and her apron wet through, and stopped. There was a man on his knees in front of the stone under the elm. He was somewhere near 50, broad, with iron-gray hair and a dark suit that had cost more than the wash house. His hat was on the grass beside him. He had one hand flat on the face of the marker, and his head was down, and he was not making any sound at all, and Reverend Pell was standing 6 feet off with his hands half raised, entirely at a loss. 2 other men in good coats stood back by the churchyard gate, plainly not knowing what to do with themselves. Delia stopped where she was. After a while, the man on the ground got up. He did it slowly, and he did not use his hands. He turned round. "Which of you cut this stone?" His voice was wrecked. "Hackett cut it," Pell said. "The mason. He is at his shop." "Who paid for it?" Pell looked at Delia. The man followed the look. He was a hard-faced man, and he had been crying, and had made no attempt to disguise either fact. "Ma'am," he said, "did you pay for this stone?" "I did." "Why?" "Because he was going to go in a hole outside the fence with nothing on him," Delia said, "and I did not care for that." "Did you know him?" "No." "Did you speak to him before?" "No, sir. I never laid eyes on him living." The man looked at her for a long moment. "My name is Cassius Braddock," he said. Delia did not know the name, and it showed. "He runs cattle on the Cimarron," Pell said quietly. 40,000 head. He is the man that the Braddock spur is named for, Mrs. Coye." "Ma'am." Braddock's voice was still not right. "I have been looking for Rufus Tandy for 25 years. He told it standing in the churchyard because he could not seem to walk out of it." "I was 23, Braddock said. "I was a hospital orderly at a place outside Fort Scott, which is a thing I have not said out loud in some years, 'cause a man in my position is expected to have been somewhere with a rifle." Pell said, "Mr. Braddock, would you not sit down?" "No." Braddock kept looking at the stone. "There was a barn we were using for the worst of them, 41 men in it who could not be moved. I had a fever coming on, and I had been awake 3 days, and I went to sleep in the corner of it about 11 at night, which I had no business doing." He stopped. "Something got into the straw," he said. "A lamp or a spark off the stovepipe. I do not know. I have never known. It went up the north wall and along the roof, and it was over the whole of it inside 4 minutes. He turned his hat over in his hands. "I woke on the floor with the roof going," he said, "and I could not get up, would not, could not. The fever had my legs and the smoke had the rest, and I lay in the straw and listened to the noise and thought, well, this is it then, and I was not even frightened, which I have since learned is the worst sign there is." He looked up. "A sergeant came in through the north door with a wet blanket over his head," Braddock said. "He was cavalry. He had no business in there. He was not hospital. He was not on that detail. He had come down from the horse lines because he saw the light. He got 11 men out of that barn in 4 trips, and I was the 9th. He put his hand flat on the top of the stone. He carried me out over his shoulder like a sack of feed, and he put me down in the wet grass, and he went back in, Braddock said. And when it came down, he was still inside it, and I lay there in the grass and watched the roof fall in on the man who had just carried me out, and I said his name over to myself all night so I would not lose it. Braddock's jaw worked. Except he came out, he said. 2 men dragged him out the far side with his back opened up and his hair burned off, and everybody said he would not last the week. And then they moved us. They moved 40 of us to Leavenworth on the Thursday, and I never saw him again, and I did not know he had lived. He looked at Delia. I have had a man on it since 1871, he said. 18 years. I have written to the Adjutant General 4 times. I had the 9th Kansas rolls copied out by hand, and I have got them in a case on that rail car. Rufus Tandy, Company D, discharged November of '64 at Fort Scott, and after that, there is nothing. Not a pension, not a land claim, not a marriage. The man walked out of Fort Scott in November of 1864, and out of every record in the United States. He stopped again. He was in Antler Crossing, he said. He was here. He walked in off the Dodge Road 3 weeks ago. Nobody said anything. 3 weeks, Cassius Braddock said. I have been 18 years, and I missed him by 3 weeks. He came to the wash house the next morning at 7, on foot, alone, which the town found more remarkable than the rail car. Delia had the copper going. She did not stop it. Mrs. Coye, Mr. Braddock, mind the step. It is rotten on the left. He stood in the doorway of the wash house and looked at the inside of it, the shelves, the baskets, the tags, the beaten floor, with an expression she could not read. I have come to settle with you, he said. There is nothing to settle. $4.10. It was mine to spend. Ma'am, Mr. Braddock. Delia pushed a sheet down into the copper with the dolly. I will say this once, and then I would like to get on. I did not do it for you. I did not know you existed. If you pay me back, then what I did becomes a thing I got paid for, and I would rather keep it. Braddock stood in the doorway a while. That is about what I expected you to say, he said. I have made some inquiries about you this morning. I am sure that was entertaining for everybody. It was instructive. He took his hat off. They tell me the lot is sold out from under you, and you have got 6 days. 5. And that the buyer is a man named Sedge, who means to put a feed store on it. That is right. I will buy the lot from him at whatever price makes him let go of it, Braddock said, and I will deed it to you clear, and I will put up a stone building on it with a proper boiler and a drying loft, and I will not ask you for anything at all, and you may spend the rest of your life telling this town that you did not ask me for it. Delia stopped the dolly. She stood over the copper with the steam coming up round her face for a good while. No, she said. Ma'am, you are not hearing me. She turned round. Mr. Braddock, do you know what happens to me in this town if a rich man builds me a building? You get a building. I get a story, Delia said. And the story is not that a woman paid $4 for a stranger's grave. The story is that the Coye woman found herself a rich man over a dead tramp. Mrs. Breedlove will have that assembled before the mortar sets, and I will be living in it for the rest of my life, and so will my daughter. Braddock said nothing. I have got one thing in this county, Delia said. I have got the fact that everything I have got, I got with these. She held up her hands. It is not much of a thing, it is what there is. So you will lose the lot. I expect I will. And go where? Wichita, most likely. There is always washing. Cassius Braddock put his hat back on. Mrs. Coye, he said, I have not been told no by anybody in about 19 years, and I find I have got no procedure for it. You will pick it up, Delia said. It is not difficult. It went on the Thursday, 11 miles east of Antler Crossing on the Dodge Road, and it was done well. Braddock ran a rail spur and 800 miles of fence, and he moved money the way everybody moved money then, which was in a strong box in a wagon with 4 armed men around it. The wagon was carrying the quarter payroll for the Cimarron outfit and the fencing contract both, which came to $11,400. 4 men in dusters took it out of a draw at first light. They did not kill anybody. They put a shot through the near wheeler to stop the wagon, and they had the box on a pack horse inside 6 minutes, and they went south into the breaks. Sheriff Bick Hanley had a posse out by 10 and lost the trail by 2 in the afternoon on hard ground. By Friday morning there was nothing. There was one thing. One of the 4 had gone over the tailgate to get at the box lashings and had caught his sleeve on the iron hasp, and there was a piece of cloth on it about the size of a playing card. Hanley had it on his desk in a tin dish when Braddock came in. "That is what we have got," Hanley said. "A bit of shirt. It could belong to any man in Kansas." Braddock picked it up. It was a cuff. White, or it had been. Good cotton, worn thin. The button was gone, and the buttonhole had torn out, and somebody had repaired it. Not replaced the cuff. Repaired it, with a small oval patch of different cloth set in behind the tear and stitched round twice in fine thread. "That is mending," Braddock said. "That is mending," Hanley agreed. "Every shirt in this county has got mending on it." Braddock stood there turning it over. Then he put it down and went out of the office without saying anything, and Hanley watched him go down the street at a pace that was almost running. He came into the wash house without knocking and put it on the ironing board in front of her. Delia looked at it for about 4 seconds. "Where did you get this?" "Off the hasp of my payroll wagon. Do you know it?" "Yes." Braddock went very still. "Say that again." "I know it." Delia picked the cuff up and turned it to the window and did not have to look long. "That is a made-over shirt. That started life a good deal bigger than it finished. See, the shoulder seam is taken in twice and let out once, and that is my patch." "Yours." "I set that patch, about April." She turned it over. "That is my stitch, that oval. You put an oval in behind a torn buttonhole because a square pulls at the corners and goes again inside a month. I have been doing them that way for 11 years, and there is nobody else in this county who does. Hackett's wife does a square. The woman at the hotel does not mend at all. She cuts the cuff off and hems it." "Whose shirt is it?" Delia held it up to the light and turned back the inner edge of the cuff where it folded under. In the corner, in thread, a shade off the white, was a small mark like a bird's foot with 3 toes. "3, she said. "3 what?" "It is a count." Delia set it down. "There are 11 men in Antler Crossing whose linen I do and who are not married. The married ones I do by the house name, Breedlove MacAskill. The single ones I mark by number, because a bachelor's shirts all look the same and they get mixed in the basket. 3 is Cletus Ward." Braddock's face did something. "Ward rides for me." "I know he does. He has had his washing here since the spring. He pays on the 1st and he is not rude." Ward was on the wagon. Braddock's voice had gone flat. "Ward was one of the 4 guards on that wagon. He is at my home place right now giving a statement about how they came out of the draw." "Then you have got your answer, and I am sorry for it," Delia said, "because a man does not tear his cuff off on the outside of a hasp he is standing next to. He tears it off going over the tailgate. They went to Hanley together, and it went badly." "No," Hanley said. "You have not thought about it." "I have thought about it for the length of time it deserves." Hanley had his boots up on the desk, and he took them down, which was as close as he came to courtesy. "Mr. Braddock, I have got the greatest respect for your position. I am not going to arrest one of your own riders on a laundry mark." She named him in 4 seconds. She named him off a bit of cloth. "Sheriff," Delia said, "if a farrier looked at a shoe and told you which smith set it, would you believe him?" "That is different." "How is it different?" "Because a farrier is a trade," Hanley said, and then heard himself, and had the grace to color slightly, and went on anyway. "Mrs. Coye, I am not going to stand in a courtroom in Dodge and tell a judge that we have got a man on a washerwoman's opinion. They would laugh me out of the territory, and Ward would walk, and then we would never get him." "Then get more," Braddock said. "There is no more to get." "There is," Delia said. They both looked at her. "He has got the rest of it?" she said. "The rest of what?" "The shirt." Delia folded her arms. "Sheriff, a man in this county has 4 shirts if he's doing well. Cletus Ward has 3, and one of them is that one, and it is the best of the 3 because I made it over for him in April out of a bigger one he had off somebody. He did not throw it away because a cuff tore. It is in his kit at Mr. Braddock's bunkhouse right now, with one cuff gone off it and a raw edge where he cut the other one to match." Hanley took his hat off the peg. "They found it in the bottom of Cletus Ward's war bag, rolled inside a spare pair of drawers. One cuff cut clean away, and the other cut level with it, and the piece from the tin dish matched the torn edge, the way a broken plate matches. Ward talked before they got him to town. Ward talked for 3 hours. By the Sunday, they had 2 of the other 3 out of a line camp on the Beaver, and the strong box out of a dry creek, with $9,200 still in it. Cassius Braddock did not leave. His car sat on the siding for 11 days, and the town got used to it. And then on the 14th of October, which was the day the wash house was to come down, he had Reverend Pell put a notice on the church door. It said that there would be a stone set in the churchyard on the Saturday afternoon at 3, and that everybody was welcome, and that Mr. Braddock would speak. The whole town came. There was nothing else happening. They stood among the graves, and along the fence, and up the path. Hanley, the Breedloves, Hackett, Sil Prather, the ladies of the academy, 60 or 70 people, and Delia Coye stood at the back near the gate with Etta because she had washing on, and had not intended to come at all until Etta made her. The new stone was under the elm beside the little one. It was granite, and it was tall, and it was covered with a sheet. Braddock did not stand on anything. He stood on the path. "Most of you know who I am," he said. "I am going to tell you what I owe, because I have found out this month that a debt nobody knows about is not a debt. It is just a feeling, and a feeling does not do anybody any good." He put his hand on the covered stone. "In September of 1864, I was a hospital orderly in a barn outside Fort Scott with a fever, and the barn burned, and I could not get up off the floor. A cavalry sergeant who was not on that detail and had no reason to be there came in through the north door and carried 11 men out of it. I was the 9th. He went back in for the 10th, and the roof came down on him. He pulled the sheet off. Rufus Tandy Sergeant, Company D 9th, Kansas Volunteer Cavalry, 1838, 1889. He went back in. I have looked for him for 18 years, Braddock said. I have had a man on it, and I have written to the War Department 4 times, and I have got the muster rolls of the 9th Kansas in a case on my rail car copied out in a clerk's hand. And in September, this man walked into your town, off the Dodge Road with a bad chest, and died in a hayloft, and I missed him by 3 weeks. He looked out at them. Now I want to be plain about the next part, he said, because I think this town has got it arranged wrong in its head. He found Delia at the back by the gate. When Sergeant Tandy died, there was nobody to say his name, and no money to bury him, Braddock said. This county would not pay. Your sheriff would not pay. Your church would not pay. There was a hole outside that fence, and that is where he was going. And every single person standing in this churchyard right now was content to let that happen. Nobody moved. One person was not, he said. A woman with $4 in a twist of cloth, and 19 days before she lost her roof, spent every cent of it on a stranger's box and a cut marker. And when they told her there was no name to cut, she told them they had not looked. He was not raising his voice. Her daughter found his discharge in the lining of his coat, Braddock said, which is where he had carried it for 25 years, because it was the only thing he had that said he had ever been anywhere. He put his hat back on. And then $11,000 of my money went off a wagon on the Dodge Road, he said, and the finest peace officer in this county had nothing but a scrap of cloth in a tin dish. And that same woman picked it up and named the man off it in under a minute, and was told that a washerwoman's opinion would not stand up in Dodge. Sheriff Bick Hanley looked at the ground. It stood up fine, Braddock said. There are 4 men in the Ford County Jail this morning, and $9,200 back in my safe, and it was got by a trade that this town has decided is beneath its notice. He came down the path a little way. I have offered Mrs. Coye money, and she will not have it, he said. I have offered her a building, and she will not have that either, and her reasons were better than my offer, which does not often happen to me. He stopped. So I am not going to give her anything, Cassius Braddock said. I am going to tell you the truth in front of each other, which is the only thing left that she cannot refuse. This town owes a debt to a woman it will not stand next to in the street. That is the whole of what I came here to say. Orrin Sedge came down to the wash-house on the Monday morning with his hat in his hands and the deed to the lot in his coat. "I have signed it over, Mr. Sedge. I have signed it over, and it is done and recorded, and I will not discuss it." Sedge was 55 and had been a decent enough man for most of that and was having a hard week. "Mrs. Coye, I have been in that churchyard on Saturday, like everybody else, and I have had a look at myself, and I did not think much of it. You paid $300 for this lot. I paid $280, and it was cheap, because everybody knew you could not stop me." He put the paper on the ironing board. "My father is buried out past that fence, ma'am. 19 years. There is no stone on him, because we could not do it that year, and then we never did. I stood in that yard Saturday and listened to that man, and I thought about my father lying out there in the weeds where the county puts people, and I could not get warm." He backed toward the door. "I am putting the feed store on the Kirby lot," he said. "It is a worse corner, and I will make less money, and I find I do not care." The building went up anyway, but not the way Braddock had wanted it. Delia would not take it as a gift, so it was done as a debt, a note at the Antler Crossing Bank for $400 at no interest, in her name, with the schedule set at what she could actually pay out of the washing, which came to 11 years. Braddock stood the guarantee and never mentioned it again. Stone to the sill, timber above, a proper brick-set boiler, a drying loft with louvered sides, and a plank floor so she was not standing on beaten dirt at 4 in the morning for the rest of her life. She paid it off in 9. The trade changed after that Saturday, which surprised nobody more than Delia. Mrs. Breedlove sent her whole house down in November and did not say a word about it, and continued not to say a word about it for the next 14 years, and when Delia was ill in 1896, Mrs. Breedlove came down the lot herself and did the sheets. Sheriff Bick Hanley never quite got over it. He brought her a torn shirt in the spring of 1890 with a bloodstain on the shoulder and set it on the ironing board and said, "Mrs. Coye, whose is this?" and stood there while she told him, and then said, "Thank you," and went out. He did it 4 more times over the next 6 years and never once made a joke about it. Cassius Braddock came back every September. He would put his car on the siding for a night and walk up to the churchyard and sit on the grass by the elm for an hour or 2 and walk down and take supper with the Coys and go on to Kansas City in the morning. He did it for 19 years until he died. Etta Coye was 26 when her mother handed over the tag book. It was a ledger, foolscap, gone soft at the corners, and it had 1,140 names in it in Delia's fine round hand, and after each name was a mark, a bird's foot, a cross, a number, a little looped knot, and a note in the margin about a shoulder seam or a habit of wearing through a left cuff. "That is the trade," Delia said. "That is the whole of it. Everything else is soap." Etta turned the pages. "Ma, did you know?" "Know what?" "That day, when you put the $4 on the gatepost." Etta looked up. "Did you have any idea that anything would come of it?" Delia thought about it, the way she had thought about it when the child was 12 and had asked her the same question in a different shape. "No," she said. "I thought I was spending $4 I could not spare on a man who could not thank me 5 days before I lost my roof. I thought it was a foolish thing to do, and I did it anyway, and I want you to understand that both of those were true at the same time, and neither one canceled the other." She closed the ledger under her daughter's hands. "That is generally how it goes," she said. "You do not get to know, you just get to choose." Out past the window, the line was full, and the wind had got into it, and 40 white shirts were snapping in a row against a clear Kansas sky, and every single one of them had a mark in the corner that said whose it was. And that is where we will leave Delia and Etta and the little town of Antler Crossing. I hope this story gave you a quiet hour away from the noise of the day. I always wonder how you spend this time with me. Perhaps you were driving a long stretch of road, or washing up after supper, or sitting somewhere warm with the lamp low. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I would truly love to know what country you are watching from. It always amazes me how far these stories travel. If you would like to ride along on the next one, A like and a subscribe mean more than you know. Thank you for spending this time with me.